Welcome Startup Grind, welcome in Mauritius for the second edition. Today we are at Uniciti Education Hub for a speech about how to invest in human capital in Africa. Before starting this conference, we'll show you a small video which I like when I'm talking about Africa. So let's have this video first to start.
I told my parents that I'm going to Africa and I'm taking my sister with me.
Hello.
They said, be careful in Africa. It's not their fault. Africa is oftentimes thought of as a dangerous place. But look around. This is Africa. This is Africa. This, and this is Africa. In Cape Town, South Africa, these houses go for $2 million each. This is one of the most expensive real estate on the continent. In Kigali, Rwanda, the streets are impeccably clean and safe, and women kind of run the show. In Casablanca, Morocco, the culture is like no other in the world. In Kenya, Nairobi, the technology startup scene is booming. In Morondopa, Madagascar, the nature is simply breathtaking. And in Lagos, Nigeria, the country's economy is huge. As I talk to you from Africa's skyscrapers, please remember, don't be careful of Africa, be excited for its potential. That's 1 minute, see you tomorrow.
Donc voilà cette vidéo which is a bit exciting. So this is a great video to pitch when we are starting about talking about Africa. So I think the next booming continent, which you all know, will be Africa. And today we are here to talk about manpower in Africa and how technology is helping this continent to be perhaps the next workforce in the world. So I'm welcome to have today two great speakers. So the first one is Vidia, which I know Vidia since 10, 20 or 15 years. He has been one of the first one in the cyber city in Medine. He has been in the IT and BPO sector since the beginning in Mauritius. And it's a great speaker, that's why today he's going to say some good thing about how education will be the next point in Africa. Second speaker is Christopher Rainer, which is founder of Medine and Price Guru. So during the last 3 years, this group has done 1.5 billion rupees of transaction, and I think it's a great success story in Mauritius, and now he's going to scale in Africa also, and I think he has a lot of things to do and to talk today. So why I'm talking about this event, which is how Africa has to bet on education, because more than 150 million people in 10 years which are going to go out of university won't find a job. So we have to find and we have to think of the job of tomorrow, and that's why we have to think how they can work remotely from Africa, but also how could they work with technology to be better than other people in this world. So Vidia, let's start now in what do you think, perhaps you can introduce a little bit about Ceridian, who you are, what you do, and what do you think of the demography in Africa and how technology can shape this environment?
Thank you, Nicolas. It's great to be here. Good morning, everyone. Very briefly about myself, I'm Vidia Moonegan. I've been with Ceridian for just over 10 years. Ceridian is a software company. We are a cloud software company in human capital management. We have operations in many parts of the world. So just a few figures for you. We have 25 million users of our software, 100,000 customers, and we move something like $300 billion a year through our business. So in Mauritius, we have primarily software engineers, implementation consultants, and support analysts. And we serve the whole world out of Mauritius. I think one good thing about cloud, and this is also good news about Africa, is that wherever you are today, you are able to serve a customer base anywhere in the world through cloud and technology. So we're excited. I think Africa has a lot of potential in Mauritius. Sometimes we forget Mauritius is part of Africa. And Africa is today 15% of the world population. The number of people in Africa today is about 1.2 billion. Probably by 2050, Africa will have over 2 billion people. About 1 billion of them will be less than 18 years old. And by the end of the century, in 2100, Africa will have 4 billion people, which is more than India and China put together. Now, this is obviously a challenge, but at the same time, it's a great opportunity. And if I look at Africa and in connection with the education system, I would say that there are 4 major forces that is shaping the landscape in Africa. First is the demographic shift. As you know, if I focus more on the sub-Saharan Africa, which is probably more of interest for us, is that this is the fastest and the youngest population in the world region. And about 50% of them will be less than 25 years old in a few years' time. So the challenge that this region has is that they have to create 18 million jobs a year for the next 15, 20 years. So this is a major challenge, yeah. 18 million jobs a year every year. So what impact does this have on the education system? It means that the education system needs to create access for these people to come into the education system. And as you know, that the constraint that they have today is that there is not enough capacity. There's not enough institutions, there's not enough schools, enough teachers, enough textbooks, and all of this is a big challenge. But at the same time, it represents a huge opportunity for investment if you are interested in this area. The second thing is that there is an emergence of the middle class. Africa in many countries have been growing in the last few years over 5% GDP annually. Some countries are performing even better than this. This means that there is about a few million households that are going to have their salary shift from $5,000 a year to $20,000 a year, which means that they can afford better education, they can invest, they will look for quality education, and also there will be more accountability on the education system. That's the second thing. The third thing is that there is going to be urbanization, rapid urbanization. Today, 12 top cities in Africa generate over 50%, over 40% of the economy of whole Africa. And what is going to happen is that 64% of the whole population of Africa will go into these cities. What this means, it means that it is going to create economies of scale, it is going to make infrastructure much more efficient, which will also help if you want to have schools, universities, then you don't have to have so many buildings and institutions across the rural areas, but it's going to be concentrated. So this is also good news for education landscape in Africa. And the fourth one is technology. Technology, as you know, in many cases, Africa has leapfrogged in many areas, even today in mobile payment, they're leader in the world. There are many countries in the world who are actually following what Africa is doing in this space. And just to give you some data points, in the last 15 years, Africa have moved from 400,000 fixed telephone lines to 800 million mobile devices in just 15 years. So this creates opportunities. It means that internet is going to Africa, means that people can be educated remotely. It also means people have more devices, that they can use these devices as gateway into the ecosystem for education.
Thank you, Vidia. I think you have done a great speech. Perhaps we can give you the mic to Mark. Perhaps what are you doing for Africa in education? I think you are the only one in Mauritius which is betting in this opportunity.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Marc Desmarais from Medine, the group, and looking after the Uniciti Education Hub here on the West Coast, and also looking after the HR of the group of Medine. So just to concur with what Nicolas and Vidia has been saying, we've bet since the last 4 years on the project of Uniciti Education Hub to create a sort of a village, a hub, where Medine itself, we are not in education. This is not our core competence. But we want to create this unique place. I usually say that what we have in terms of characteristics is uniqueness, diversity, and excellence. These are the three main characteristics. So around that we've created several types of institutions in different fields, Vatel for hotel management, Assas for law, Centrale de Nantes for the engineering, Ensan for the architecture, and Supinfo for the IT. We've also had Middlesex who joined our hub as a comprehensive university. We are busy talking to the Animation School of Cape Town, which have a 3-year degree, and in July and August this year we're going to have short courses for youngsters during the holidays just to give them some interest. We're also talking to a medical school, Paris Descartes, as well as another business school to come into the pipeline. The idea is to really create the platform for affordable cost, quality education with employability at the end. 100% of the Supinfo students that are with us have got a job after the 2nd year. Before getting into their 3rd year, they have a guaranteed job because they have to do the internships, and that's key. We have most of the foreign students. Out of 1,700 students today on the whole hub, there are about 38% foreigners, which actually entails 27 different nationalities, running from Rwanda, Zimbabwe, Nigeria, Kenya, Tanzania, South Africa. We even have a lady from the US, 2 guys from Bangladesh, from India. So we're going to also move into the other side of the map, but the real concentration is Africa. With all the stats that you've been hearing just now, we do use that also, but we also know that Africa have got 44 different countries, sub-Saharan, and even one country like Nigeria, if you go to Lagos or Abuja, it's not the same thing. If you go to Dar es Salaam or Moshi, it's not the same thing in Tanzania. Just one stats or two, Kenya has 425,000 students leaving secondary school every year for 50,000 seats of university in Kenya. So they don't have much. So how fast will they be able to build is going to be key. So we want to provide this platform here. Nigeria is 1.6 million students leaving secondary school every year for 450,000 university seats. So just to give you some example of scales, and we are in the beginning. Education is not a return of investment of 5 years, it's a bit longer than that, so we have to be patient. And like they say in Africa, if you want to go fast, you go alone, but if you want to go far, you...
It's a good company, that's why I just wanted you to thank you for what you are doing, because you are one of the success stories we have in Mauritius, and perhaps in Africa very soon. So tell me more about you, and also how do you see Africa for your business?
Thanks, Nicolas. First of all, thanks for the invitation. Great to be here. So I might, obviously I'm going to try and stay on topic, which is Africa and human capital, but before I'm just going to present quickly our startup. So we started 4 years ago with a company called Medine, and we noticed that, like in Africa, there was a huge demand for a service that was highly unorganized and unstructured. So people were trying to make reservations for hotels, for activities, restaurants, but there was no starting point where they could access the data, where they could in real time make a reservation. So obviously we came up with the idea of building this technology that would be able to reach as many people as possible with the correct information and giving them the facility to book online. So we identified the need, we executed the technology, and it moved very quickly. So following that, it was clear, a lot of people said, no, I doubt it's going to work, Mauritians aren't ready. And one thing that I learned very quickly is that when you have an idea and you have people telling you, I doubt it's going to work, that's when automatically you know that you are on the right track. If people say your idea is going to work, definitely go ahead, that's when you know, I'm not sure it's going to work. So after that, after my deal, we did Price Group, which is e-commerce, a bit Amazon style, but mini, in the sense that we are a retailer, so we import products, but we are also a marketplace. So we give the opportunity to wholesalers, distributors to list their products. We can stock their products and fulfill their orders, meaning we can deliver their orders across Mauritius. And today, our combined platforms in Mauritius, we have 400,000 website visits monthly. We have 150,000 active customers. So an active customer is a customer who has transacted on our website in the last 12 months. And so we've built this nice ecosystem, and as Vidia rightly said, the opportunity of being in the technology industry is that once you have a software that is working and is functioning, and you have the right team, you can easily scale it if you have the right infrastructure with cloud. And this is why now we are looking towards regional markets and Eastern Africa, and we are hoping to be able to offer our technology as a PaaS, which stands for Platform as a Service. So we don't necessarily have to go in a market. We can find partners who have the right experience in the market, and they can use our technology at an expense. It could be a monthly retainer or a shared scheme. So regarding Africa, I think Africa has a lot of similarities with our experience in Mauritius when we started Moonegan. Funnily enough, it's an online booking platform, but the majority of Mauritians don't have credit cards. So how do you create an online business when people can't buy online was the first reality. And I think Africa has a lot of that as well. So I think in Africa you have to definitely expect the unexpected. And in this informal, unorganized market, if you understand technology, it creates huge opportunities, because you can already come forward with a solution, and when you have that solution, you have an added value that can definitely, it's a strong proposition. So as Vidia said, mobile payments in Africa, a lot of countries, I mean, if you look at the Western countries and Asian countries, before they reached mobile payments, it took them a very long time. They started off with basic banking, and then they went into internet line banking, like internet banking. But Africa leapfrogged straight from without having bank accounts to mobile banking. So why? Because there was a huge opportunity and people weren't able to transact. So obviously people sat down and said, there's a real opportunity, there's a complex issue, but how do we solve it? And it's a very inclusive model, because now you have Maasais who are selling their whatever animals they have, and they're transacting on a mobile SMS and they're getting paid. So I think us being in Mauritius, I think there's huge opportunities if we can identify niches and make use of that.
Thank you, Chris. Now, when I heard the mark, we are going to have a lack of seats in Africa on education. So I think not everybody will come to Mauritius, and few people won't have money to pay a decent education. So when I talked to you, Chris, you told me education online, of course, and we have many websites which could, at an affordable price, do some education. And we talk about Uniciti. And I think you have an experience about Uniciti?
Yes. Yeah. I'm very passionate about Uniciti. So for those of you who don't know Uniciti, it's go check it out. It's uniciti.com. It was founded by Stefan Fern, who's a German computer scientist, and it's a fascinating story. So he worked at Google on Google X, and then he was a professor at Stanford University, and in a very, very niche and advanced field, which is AI. And so he was teaching to his class of 500 students, which by Stanford is very large. And then one day he had this idea and says, well, I'm gonna open this class, and he did what we call MOOC, which is a open online courses. And so he opened his course, which was an AI course, and he had 160,000 students who enrolled for the class. And he had 500 physical students, so he was like, wow, this is a whole new dimension. And when the results came in, the best ranking Stanford student came 520th. So the education of using technology and being able to open a curriculum, technology completely transformed that experience, and it's an equalizer. It's to democratize education. So today, what I like about Uniciti as well is that if you take a course, a lot of the courses are free, but some of the courses you pay for. But it's very precise fields that guarantees you to get a job. So a lot of people nowadays are studying bachelor degrees, but with their bachelor degree, they can't find a job. Uniciti says if you complete your course, we guarantee you will find a job. And if you can't find a job, we pay you back. So they are building courses that they are 100% sure there is massive demand. We're talking about Android technology, we're talking about virtual reality, data analysts, Google analysts, so very, very niche special fields, and they call it nano courses. So a nano course is a compacted course which happens over a shorter period, normally 1 year to 6 months. And these courses are more skill-based. And I think the way society, technology is moving so fast that I think we're going to have to move more towards a skill-based society and more agile, and not just think I'm going to do a traditional course, sit in a lecture room and in front of a professor who's going to profess for 2 hours. But I'm going to more go on a skill-based approach, and I'm going to do a continue learning throughout my career. And instead of just saying I'm going to try and aim for that one bachelor, one master, and hang on to that for life, but I think, yeah, with Uniciti, you can just keep on advancing.
Yes, I'm 100% right with you. I think this is the future for the world and Africa. Vidia, what do you think about Uniciti, Coursera, and all this MOOC platform? Do you hire people who are come from this platform or not yet?
I think people are already using it, yeah. I think it complements or supplements what you're doing already in your more traditional education path. I think if we were to look at Africa today, Africa doesn't just need more education. Africa needs education at scale. If you look at the numbers and the population that is coming out of the system, if you don't have technology, there's no way you're going to meet the expectations of Africa. And I think one of the criticisms we hear very often about universities, the traditional universities, is that it costs a lot of money. It is too long, the courses are too long, sometimes not very relevant to industry, and people leave universities without a job. I think we need to rethink about what universities and the whole ecosystem of education is going to look like in the future. And I think Africa is a great opportunity that we can kind of learn from other people's mistakes so we don't make the same mistakes in Africa. I think just to give you some perspective in terms of the demand. Today, 8% of university enrollment in Africa is at 8%. If you compare this with the US, it's 50%. If you compare this with India, it's 18% in India. Now, if you look at, if we were to reach, if Africa wanted to reach the level of India in 15 years, Africa needs to open 135 universities enrolling 10,000 students a year for 15 years to just reach where India is at 18%. Now, nobody can do this with the traditional bricks and mortar model. So you need to have a combination of the bricks and mortar and also leveraging more the online. Like, for example, today education is being seriously disrupted. The universities of tomorrow is going to be very different to the universities even today is already disrupted. Christopher mentioned about Uniciti, but there are other MOOC providers like edX, like Coursera, and also I think there's one called General Assembly. Now these are becoming more and more popular because people now, where they are identifying the part of the knowledge that they need to help them in their career, so they can pick and choose which part of knowledge that they need. For example, most of us have gone to universities, and what percentage of what we learned at university we are using in our job today is very small. Yeah, it's hardly what we. So the advantage of the online is that you can pick. I'm going to do this job, and I need that skill. So you go and pick that particular skill. It's quite competitive because it's not very expensive. Now, if I look at edX, for example, edX was launched in 2012, in May 2012, and just 5-7 years ago. 5-6 years ago. And in that 6 years, they've actually enrolled 14 million learners. No university can achieve in 5 years 14 million learners enrolled. They have actually enrolled 50 million courses, and they have something like 1,800 courses online that you can pick from. That shows you the scale. If you look at also now, there are other companies which is not only this is a disruption from institution to the more traditional model, but also now there is also alternative. For example, today there are many companies who are telling you, okay, like PwC, with their apprenticeship scheme, they will say, you just leave secondary school, you come to us, we have our academy, and we're going to help you get your education very focused on what you want to do in your career. So all this disruption is happening, and when we look at the disruption, we need to rethink the university model of the future. Like I said, there is huge demand, but we should make sure that we understand how it's going to move in the next few years, both from a technology, from a demographic point of view, so that when we decide what the right model for Africa is, we make sure that it works. Yeah, like I said, Africa badly needs education, And also there are a lot of constraints. Let's talk about these constraints. First is that if you want to scale universities in Africa, there are no teachers. So where are you going to find those teachers? It will take you ages to build that ecosystem of teachers. And if you look at content, there's hardly any content. Now there is also the complexity of local languages. There's a lot of languages that are spoken in Africa, and most people in Africa don't speak English and French, at least the proportion of the population. So you have all these challenges. So how are you going to handle all of these challenges? You need to build something that is very specific for Africa. Not try to copy what model has worked in other parts of the world and try to deploy this into Africa. You need to be very careful in terms of how you approach this here. So what I would say is that you need a blended model. You need the traditional university because unfortunately, the MOOC is great from kind of an access, etc. But the failure of the MOOC system is that most people don't actually end the course. There's the dropout rate is about 80%. So why is this the case? It's because you need both the online, but also you need the social setting. You need to be able to meet people, discuss, build knowledge together, construct knowledge. I mean, in the old model, you go to university, you shut up, and you just listen to your teacher. They just tell you what you need to know, and you write notes. In today's world, this doesn't work anymore. Now, today, what the education is about, you construct the knowledge based on what you are passionate about and what you want to do in life. So you pick and choose what you want, and you build your knowledge around this, and by sharing with your peers, you're able to learn much, much faster. And this is the answer to the lack of teachers in Africa. I think, if I just to conclude on this, you need to bring the best teachers, the best content into Africa, virtually, almost, because you won't find enough teachers in Africa, and at the same time have this social setting where people can meet in a building and share.
Thank you. I also have to add, I'm working with Talenteum. Talenteum is a recruitment agency which is combined with a platform, and we are helping people to find a job. And someone from Nigeria who did Middlesex University came to see me, and he said, Nicolas, I can't find a job, but look my CV, I can do some chatbots and intelligence artificial. I said, I didn't know you were learning that at Middlesex. And he told me, no, I'm learning that above Middlesex every night. I did some course in my room, and I know how to create some chatbots, and I know that chatbots, everybody's building chatbots in Europe. I showed a CV to one of my customers. He didn't believe in the CV, so he said, I will test him during the weekend. And during the weekend on Monday, the clients called me. He said, okay, he passed the test, so let's take this guy. And now he's still working with me, and for my customer. He's from Nigeria, and he has learned on himself, above university, but on himself, on the technology of tomorrow. So what you were saying, Christophe, is I think this is one of the key. Africa has to learn by themselves, and to try to find also how technology, remote technology, will help them to find a job remotely from Africa. Perhaps also, Christopher, I know that you have an IT team, you are a big team in Mauritius, but also a team working remotely. So how does it work? Does it work to work remotely with a team?
Thanks. Yeah, in Mauritius we have 105 employees, and which is mainly just admin and logistics and customer service. And then all our development is done overseas, so we have 10 developers. Full-time developers who are on our payroll but aren't based in Mauritius. So we have developers based in the US, in Vietnam, in Estonia, and in India. And so how we do it is that we manage them on a day-to-day basis. They are actually fully employed by tech companies overseas, and they're all very specialized in different fields, whether it's data infrastructure, whether it's security. So then every day we review with them on Skype. There's a lot of easy communication tools. And they have a scope of work, and then we review their scope, but we give them everything that we need to be done. We give them the architectural designs, explanations on how to do it, and we find it very easy to work with remote developers, even though they're not based in Mauritius, but they've been on the project for a sufficient amount of time to properly understand our needs. So for us it works extremely well, and we're going to continue that way.
Okay, and you, Vidia, what about working collaboratively? Because you have teams all over the world also. So what are the tools and the cloud which you are putting to manage everybody in the world?
I think today you can pick and choose where the skills you can find them regardless of where they are. As a global company, we tell our customers we are open for business 24/7. It means that we are in different time zones and we have teams, support teams, implementation teams in almost most of the geographies. We serve 56 countries today. So it's learning how to be more effective using the tools and the technology. And today, with internet, with cloud, etc., it's very affordable and it's very effective. The tools are getting better and better. And sometimes, you know, the Surface Pro, I'm not sure whether you have it, you've seen it, but the Surface Pro gives you an experience as if you're in the same room as your colleagues in other parts of the world. And I think this is something that's also very important for us in Mauritius because we are remote as a country. Yeah? It is very expensive to travel, so how we can get better connected so that we can do work much more effectively. Yeah, I think this is the way that companies today should operate, because there's a lot of productivity gain that you can have, and also access knowledge from anywhere. You don't have to wait to create them, but you can access them anywhere.
Thank you. So now if I can sum up this conference of this morning, how to invest in human capital in Africa, I will say two things. First, Africans have to learn by themselves online, and this is one of the key. And second, they will have to work remotely from their country, because I don't think Europe or Africa will host a lot of people. And I think this is what we have to bet. So working remotely and online education. So thank you for being here. I advise you to question our speaker, because Christopher is not doing a lot of speech in Mauritius, so we are happy to have him today here. I convinced him. And Vidia is a great speaker. He has always some great figures, so he has done a lot of jobs, a lot of things for today. So do you have a question perhaps? Yes, René?
Yes, thank you. I think governments have proven to be disastrous in planning of education. And for years, a very good Mauritian entrepreneur friend of mine has tried to convince the government to take their education budget every year, divide by the number of scholars and students, and give each scholar and student a credit that he can choose how to be educated. It's like the charter schools in America, which have a far better record than the normal schools. And they have huge reaction against charter schools in America because they are so successful in what they do. But I think if we can try and promote that in Africa, it would be a great step, because the governments have fostered somewhere the skills gap from lack of planning, and now the students themselves should choose in the skills that are required of him, so he can choose his education with government funding by a coupon system.
That would be a great idea. We have to convince them now.
Yeah. Can I comment on this? Yes.
I think one of the challenges we find in Africa is that Africa predominantly is the informal economy. It means that people don't pay taxes, because it's very difficult to know how much people are earning. So there's hardly any money to invest in education. So when you look at how you're going to finance education in Africa going forward, you have to look at different ways. And I think one of the things that even many countries are already doing, whether US and Europe, they have differential pricing. So if you have foreign students in some of these countries, you pay between 2 or 4 times what a domestic student will pay. And I think Africa should do the same, but they need to have high quality education in order to do this. So this will help fund the education. The second thing is to look at investors. Yeah. So if you convince a pool of investors to kind of mentor people and invest into their education, then you can actually get those investors to pay for the education, and then get the students to pay every year 10% of the salaries or something like this. Yeah, over 10 years they will pay back, which is kind of a student loan. But the problem in Africa is that governments don't have money to loan the students. So you'll have to get the source from different sources. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Do we have other questions in the room?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. 2 questions. One is more on infrastructure in Africa. I think we know little about IT infrastructure in Africa and how fast internet is benefiting in terms of fiber optics or other. And maybe that's one technology future that we would like to hear about from you if you've been around. Secondly, particularly in Mauritius, we know that we have a need for IT people, for example. And there are universities in Africa that are producing those, already producing those. And most of the time they don't have jobs that are really matching that level because you don't have a proper IT sector, for example, in some of those countries. How ready is Mauritius, and maybe Medine can also talk about that, how ready is Mauritius as a society to actually accept and attract and work with African nationals coming from continental Africa, I would say, because we've seen some blockages, cultural blockages probably there. How ready are we as a country? And again, in terms of image, we think we are labeled #1 in so many areas. How better are some of continental African countries in terms of IT or internet infrastructure or penetration compared to Mauritius?
on the first one, on the technology one, yeah, I think this is a very good question, by the way, because if you look at penetration of internet in Africa, it's only 20%. 20% of people in Africa are connected to the internet, so most people don't have internet. And on top of this, about over 50% of Africans don't have electricity. So that's a huge issue, yeah, if you want to say, okay, how people can learn online. I think if you look at, there is a company called .learn. .learn is a startup that was set up by an engineer from MIT. And it's actually, you can actually have all your content on your mobile device, so you don't actually need to be permanently connected to the internet. I think one way that they can kind of also help with this is that we are already living in a sharing economy of Uber and Airbnb, etc. Why doesn't Africa actually build some buildings in the major cities and make internet available in those buildings, that people, the students and people who want to have access can use it when it's not being used by the officers, etc. So I think there are ways of actually doing this, and also you don't need to be permanently connected to the internet. You can actually download your content when you're at school or in the office, etc. So that's one way, and hopefully it will kind of get more deployed in terms of connectivity. But I mentioned to you already that in the last 15 years, we've moved from 400,000 lines to 800 million devices, and on the bandwidth, internet bandwidth, they have increased, I think, 24 in the last 10, 12 years. Yeah. So I think there's hope for the technology, and it's how you use it. Obviously, it's more limited, but I think, like I said, we don't have any other alternative. I think education in Africa needs to happen through digital means to a large extent. Yeah. On the second one, how ready we are, I would say that we have. Let me just share one information with you, which may kind of scare a lot of people, because in Africa, I mean, a lot of it, we should not, when we build human capital in Africa, we should not build human capital that is very traditional to what it has been. Let's stop trying to copy what people in Europe or US or Asia did a few years ago, because you're starting from a very low base. Because I'm going to tell you something. I read an article very recently, and this was from the US, and they said that in 20 years, the US factories, manufacturers, will be able to produce more cheaply than in Africa through automation, artificial intelligence, etc., robotics. What does that mean? It means that right from the start, you need to build a knowledge economy in Africa. You can't build on traditional industries. You have to take a technology that is available today and be able to have factories which is not labor intensive in Africa, but is able to compete with other factories globally. What it means that we need better teachers, we need better technology, we need better, stronger institutions in Mauritius. And also remember, we are using Mauritius as a platform to deploy into Africa. Yeah, I mean, it's good to have students from Africa to come here, but it's going to be limited. Remember, 18 million people a year from sub-Saharan Africa needs jobs, so you can't bring all these people here. But I think having the right model here that is tested, proven, delivering high quality, that is accessible, and deploying that model into Africa using technology is the way forward.
Great, thank you, Vidia. Does it respond? Chris, do you have something to add?
Have you seen companies coming to you with IT talent from the continental Africa? Because you mentioned a number of countries where your IT guys are from. Can you see that coming now from Africa? Do you see Rwandans or Ugandan people, specialist IT companies sourcing talent from Africa? Can you start seeing that now?
Yeah, sure. I'm not an expert in that field, but I know that there are certain coding competitions that are hosted by big, large companies and that do target the African continent. And obviously, when you talk the numbers of the youth and such exponential numbers, that obviously you have talent, and you have talent that are succeeding and that are extremely gifted at coding, programming. So the talent is in Africa. It's just being able to reach out to them and to give them the chance to express themselves with the skills and give them the tools to be able to acquire these skills. Because with the digital economy, people can be self-taught, and a lot of the talent from Africa is actually self-taught. So all they need is maybe a tablet and a connection. And I think, like we were talking earlier, the structural problems of that Africa seems to be facing. The solution, again, if we look at the banking system, how they leapfrog straight from eliminating banks and going straight into mobile payments through mobile wallets. I think these are the type of moves that Africa will have to make, whether it's infrastructure, education, and the solution that they're going to have to apply is going to have to be brought by them, and it's not going to be able to be a solution that's available elsewhere because their problems or their constraints are inherent to themselves.
Okay, thank you. They arrived late, but we have someone which I talked about you. It's Olak, which is from Nigeria, and he's here. So finally you find a place, so I'm happy. So we talk about you. Perhaps you can say a few words about you did Middlesex University here at Uniciti, and how you have learned by yourself after university, and what is your experience working with me now and working for a European company. And thank you Rajiv, which is coming with him, because he introduced me. Rajiv is an expert in inbound marketing in Mauritius, and he said, I have talents, I want to introduce you. So if you want to come, Olak, it would be a great pleasure.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Olakunyola Dimeji. I'm an alumni of Middlesex University. Back in 2014, after I finished at Middlesex University, a lot of my colleagues, African colleagues, they go back home. They no job, no nothing. But I felt that I needed to actually build my skill set. Mauritius actually provides vast opportunities for people who actually have the skill set. So after I finished university, I started working with Rajiv, and he gave me a few projects to actually get my hands started on. The project we started on was with IBM Watson Conversation. This chatbot thing, it was beginning to actually boom then. Through YouTube, through tutorials like Linda, Udacity, videos like that actually helped me build my knowledge of IT. In fact, one of you was saying something about digital education. In fact, it was great because I was able to learn things like Node.js, dialogue flow, about REST APIs and whatnot, just through the power of education. Because the traditional schools don't actually, most of the thing is just theory. And through all that, I was able to become an expert in dialogue flow and whatnot. So, and last year I started working at Talenteum, a fantastic place and they have actually I can see that they really believe in the African talent, because I know a lot of Africans, and I know that they are actually very, very brilliant people, but the opportunities are just not there. So with fixing the internet problem, a lot of people use internet, but not for the right purposes. Giving them a digital education will actually go a long way in helping them. Thank you very much. Sorry, it's kind of impromptu, so I think
So thank you, Olak, and I think also Rajiv, perhaps you have guiding because it's good to have a lot of online education, but also to guide people about what they have to learn because of tomorrow jobs. And I think it's good because Rajiv, you are on the top of what is working on the internet, and talking about IBM Watson was a great move to advise him to work on that. So I think, do we have other questions on the room? Or I think it's fine. Perhaps I will give the mic to Clyde. So
Sorry.
Clyde also arrived a little bit late. So he has an incubator in Ivory Coast.
Yes.
So you are from Mauritius, but
Like Vaché, many of you know me, being part as communication director, then moved with my family to Abidjan, Ivory Coast. That's good to speak English, you know, a little back in the country. In 2015, started taking care of myself, did an MBA, joint project between a West African university and the University of Milan Business School, MBA in Impact Entrepreneurship and Sustainable Development. Started coaching students with, in partnership with Moroccan University and French University. Meaning that there are universities. It's true that in the wake of independence in most of, I would talk of West African countries, university training became a major focus for these countries to train their new elite, between the commas. Unfortunately today, after many mishaps in democracy, in the continuity of democracy after independence, the state of these universities has really gone down, and you were making mention of that. But what is interesting, since I joined Talenteum Factory, which is a social entrepreneurship hub, meaning that we have a co-working place, incubator, accelerator, based in Abidjan. We are opening an office in June in Paris, with the help of some members of the diaspora there. We are opening an office in Mauritius soon, I hope. I was signing papers this morning to that effect. And what is interesting is to note the things that you made mention about, bridging the digital gap, but also bridging partnerships with repats. I had personally the chance to, and some of you, I believe, because he came here, I think 2 years ago, Cyril and Conchu from Liquid Africa investment funds, who created ENCO Investment, which is ENCO Education now. So a lot of repats right now are getting back to Africa, getting back to their roots and trying to set up schools, primary, secondary, tertiary level. You have the example of Fred Swanika and his team here from AU. I met a few of the students, Ivorian students, who are leaving in May. Very, very happy of the experience here. Some of them would have been happy to have a job. I'm not sharing their CVs, but you can go and knock at the door of ALU. Sorry of mentioning about ALU here at Uniciti, but anyway. I met some of them, but some of them are returning and are already have 2 projects, one of them which will be incubated in Abidjan with the help of their fellow comrades from West Africa, but also from Mauritius. So a lot of things happening, and I think that we in Mauritius, I've been to Africa only in the past 3 years. People have been there before, and many more will go there after. But I think that we should be informed of what's happening there. It's difficult on a day-to-day basis. I was in touch with some of you from Uniciti Medine village 2 years back, when lost in translation, we didn't catch up. But a lot of things are happening, and I had the chance to share a few ideas with Nicolas at Talenteum, and it could be a two-way traffic, not only coming here, but going there. Because right now, we are working in Abidjan with ESSEC to launch grassroots level incubators, really social entrepreneurship hubs, which is quite a challenging mission, in fact, adapting methods that have been used elsewhere in the world, but also in Africa, adapting them to grassroots level, working, for instance, with local artisans, working with small businesses, and it's quite challenging, but we are hopefully reaching the end for launch in September 2018 in Rabat and in Abidjan. The other thing is that many of these repats are coming back to Africa with funds. And this is something that has been quite interesting in the past 18 months. We ourselves have signed with 4 either VC clubs, investment funds clubs, because a lot of repats want to give back what they obtained in the beginning in Africa. And Mauritius, I believe, not Mauritians as such, but Mauritius as such, could play an interesting role, because in spite of all the questions that I get in those conferences, oh, what's happening to your president, what's happening to your government, they like, you know, making puns at us, because very often we Mauritians who arrive in conferences, we're number 1 here, number 1 there, Mo Ibrahim Foundation, Index, etc. So our fellow friends and brothers and sisters from Africa, they also make puns at us, but we are keen to come here because of for the French, West African French speakers, we are keen to come in a country where they can learn English. They are keen to come to a country which has a very good reputation in the finance sector, and they are keen to learn also about our multicultural approach, because Mauritius is so special. So what I urge you guys is to travel, is to go there and meet. There are a lot of opportunities. Christopher was making mention of all these startup fairs, of all these meetings that happen. Well, it's easier to go to East Africa or Southern Africa, but take another plane. Come to Central Africa. Come to West Africa. There are quite a few Mauritians that are settled right now there, and we would be happy to help you out with meeting the right people. Otherwise, we'll try to bring them also. So in August, I'm bringing some of these funds here in Mauritius, just to see whether it could be interesting to partner with bodies, NGOs, or budding, as we see right now. We're saying it's a buzz, but I hope it won't be just a buzz. Startups and incubators in Mauritius. So very happy to be here. Very happy to share a few. I'm on holidays, but I just left my wife and family down there on the beach. And
thank you, Clyde. It was a deep feedback, and we know that if we need to go to Ivory Coast, you have an incubator there, and we can knock on your door.
With great pleasure.
Thank you. So thank you everyone for being here today. I think it was a great speech. Thank you for the 2 speakers, Vidia Moonegan from Moonegan and Christopher Rayner from Mauritius. Thank you both of you. Il reste du café dehors s'il est encore chaud.